So BC Group, specialising in building warrant and fitnesses. How did you become involved with BC Group? Where did that journey start for you?
I'd spent 25 years in the property industry, starting with a degree in property from Lincoln, and got to the stage where I'd been general manager and CEO of various private companies, including head of property for 8 years at Dilworth, and I was ready. I wanted to spend that time not self-employed, but working in a organisation where I could spend time with the kids and not have too much stress. But
nice. Yeah.
Kids are now at a stage where they're a bit more independent.
Yeah.
So decided I wanted to be self-employed, but I wanted to stay in the property sector, which is the property sector I know and love. I have a lot of contacts. So, excuse me.
That's right.
So I looked around for a business that had a regular cash flow, regular sustainable income, and there weren't many. A lot of people gravitate to property development, which is subject to economic cycles.
Yep.
Property management was another very good business, but I really wanted something with that regular cash flow, and this was an area which is regulated and has been around for a long time under an Act of Parliament. So I stumbled across. Well, I started in the fire business actually, and put a contract on a fire business. And then through that journey stumbled across BC Group, bought into it 2019.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And so what was the attraction about BC Group at the time for you? Was there anything in particular that stood out and made you think that's the one I'd like to get involved with?
Well, BC Group as a company, looking at it from the outside in, was an exceptional company in that it had been around for 27 years at that point. And I'd actually been using them for a building that I owned for many years, and it sort of rung that familiar bell, and got really excited about, because the story was very good, having that connection, and the systems and the processes, they had a very good reputation for being the best in the sector. Part of my due diligence was to talk to various people in property that I've dealt with over the years to test that, and so yeah, when it came up, it was the one. But it took 6 months from when I first found out about it to finalise a contract to purchase, at the time, 60% of the business, and yeah, so it was a great journey, and it's gone well ever since, luckily.
Yeah. And as far as an industry goes, it's it's not one of those glamorous industries. It's very much like what we do. You're kind of behind the scenes, providing a very important service, but it's not something that people automatically recognise or relate to. It tends not to be an industry where it's like up in lights, and everyone knows what BC Group does, and everyone knows what Active does, and it's like, who? Sometimes, but that's not derogatory, but it's just we are behind the scenes somewhat, right?
Yeah, certainly the invites from CBRE and Colliers to the functions have stopped. Occasionally I might get a phone call from somebody, but it is. But that's quite nice too, because it's quite liberating. There's a lot less pressure to perform in terms of being the shiny, bright sort of service provider that has to step up at peak points. We're just slow, steady prodder behind the scenes, and that sort of suits my personality, to be honest.
It's cool that you managed to find a business that suits your personality like that. You haven't had to adjust too much, and it kind of resonates with how you operate. I guess as building managers, we have a fair bit to do with the BWOF process, the building warrant and fitness process, and so we've got to make sure that building warrant of fitness is achieved on time. It's got to be displayed, physically in the building where it's easily accessible for the public. And so our role as building managers to ensure that those couple of little things happen. The other thing that tends to happen is we do the monthly owners inspections, means of escape and what have you, on behalf of the body corporate. But then we're also tasked with remediating any issues that say your team of inspectors would come up with. You guys do your annual check, and then they say, well, you have to get some smoke seals done, or some penetrations need doing, or what have you. So that tends to be our main interaction. Then we've got to go out and get quotes to get these things fixed, and make sure it's all done before the BWOF date. So that's our little interaction as building and facility managers. Just so where I'm leading to with that, there is a point to that statement. Is how is your team structured to be able to deliver your service? Like who's in the office and who's out and about?
Well, firstly, I guess it's obvious that you guys do all the hard work and the simple stuff. So, but working with Active has been a blessing. There's probably 4 or 5 excellent property management companies that we work with, and it reflects on the points you make in terms of delivering remedial items or defects, and then also overcoming those in time to deliver the warrant of fitness on the due date. We've been privileged to work with Active Building Management. So
thanks for saying that. Yeah, that's great. And likewise with BC Group, like we're not here just to kiss each other's backsides and stuff. It's like, but there's a couple of really strong reasons why we like your guys' company and your service. But I'll talk about those a bit later. So just go back to your staffing structure. Yeah.
We have a staff of 16 administrators that work with a portal that we've created over 15 years. We work with most of the major property companies, and through feedback from them and continuous improvement, we've come up with something that's very bespoke for our sector. We've invested more than $2 million into that portal and that process.
Heck.
But what it provides, along with the fantastic staff that we have, who on average I think have been with us for 10 years.
It's amazing in today's environment.
Long-serving, committed staff. The portal enables us to deliver a higher standard than we think the rest of the industry does. We provide contemporaneous records or file notes for every discussion with every contract as we're chasing up the 12As to deliver the warrant of fitness. And those are provided in note form on our portal, but also we send updates to our clients 21 days and 14 days in an automated process. So they too, without even logging onto our portal, can be updated with what's going on with the process of collecting the documents to issue the warrant of fitness. That's been a godsend through sort of lockdown, when people have been off work and buildings haven't been accessible and contractors haven't been able to get access to buildings. There's been a lot of disruption in our sector, but for us it's made us shine a little bit more than the rest of them because of our fantastic processes. So when you go and tick off everything, we jump on it very quickly, we follow you up, and then we put a file note to let you know that if it's not you chasing it up, it might be Wormold or Fire Security Services or whoever it is, that we've spoken to John on this date and he said he's going to do this on that date. And then we follow up again and again and again, and to the point where you as the owner or the property manager have comfort to know that we're on top of it and it's going to be delivered on time, so the warrant of fitness gets delivered on time.
That system is one of the things that we enjoy about the service that you guys provide. It's amazing. Like it was a breath of fresh air to find that there was a company out there like yours that could back up its service with the technology, and it's made our team's life a heck of a lot easier. Just the way that it's beautiful to use. Like, it's really well designed. It's very functional. You log in and everything it's very clear to follow. Like, you don't really need a training session on it. It's all quite intuitive, and that's, I think, to me, that's like the standard for how technology should be. You shouldn't even need to be trained on it. You should be allowed to just log in and you can figure it out. And I think your guys system delivers that, which is brilliant. Yeah.
So it's been honed over many years with largely the main property companies who have large portfolios and are held to account by shareholders. Most of them are listed on the stock exchange, so that transparency is important to them. And the other thing, if there was an insurance issue, like if a sprinkler wasn't working, for example, and there was a fire or an issue, that forensics on being able to trace back from the start of the process as to why the building may not have had a warrant of fitness or may be defective, would become very important in the case of a court hearing or a situation like that. So there's some real value, particularly when you're dealing with larger, more valuable buildings. Insurance companies are getting a lot more clever around avoiding paying out.
Yeah.
But when you've got what I call a contemporaneous record or track record of discussions with various contractors, the forensics is quite an easy process, and people can be held to account for their actions.
Okay.
So our owners really like that, and their directors and PCBUs under the Health and Safety Act also value that transparency, which isn't available in most other operators in our space.
Just when you've brought that up, the PCBU thing obviously ties in with health and safety. There is a, at times, do you find it difficult to, I guess that line between compliance and health and safety can often be a little bit grey? Would that be fair? Because there's some things that you would determine to be, well, that's health and safety, but some are compliance. Or how do they actually fit hand in hand?
Yeah, I think for us, our deliverables and criteria are very defined under the Building Act, 2004. Health and safety sort of dovetails into that, but probably not our main guiding. Our inspectors typically don't do toolbox workshops or anything else. They're generally they observe what's going on site. So I'm probably not answering this question very well.
That's all right.
But yeah, I think generally if the building has a current warrant of fitness, then excuse me, then it's deemed to be safe.
Yeah.
Then that probably ties into the fact that it ticks off that onus of a PCBU under the Health and Safety Act.
Yeah.
It means that all the systems in the building are working as they were intended to work, and the occupants are safe. One of the bugbears that I have is that I don't think a lot of governments understand how important it is that they do have a current warrant of fitness for that very reason of health and safety. If there was an issue and they were the PCBU under the Health and Safety Act, then I think the ramifications, if it was ever tested in court, and to my knowledge it hasn't yet, could be quite significant for those people in those governance roles. So knowing whether you've got a current warrant of fitness, knowing whether all your systems are working in your building as they were intended to when they were installed, is quite a important part of that governance role. And I just don't think it's been probably tested or recognised yet in that space.
Okay.
I see a lot of parties that are quite lax in understanding their obligations under the Building Act for the stuff in our space and compliance.
Well, that's actually probably a good lead into the what we were talking about before around what is the actual purpose of a BWOF. We understand it, but I think if you bring some detail to why we actually have the when the changes happened back in the 90s, when that requirement came around, there must have been a few big reasons why it did come around.
Yeah, well, just sort of maybe it's probably an opportunity to sort of step through that process for your clients.
Yeah.
I guess when a developer buys a block of land, he goes to an architect and says, well, I want to see what I can build under the district plan. The architect sort of looks at the options and what's permitted and discretionary and all that sort of stuff. But he comes up for it with a sort of, I guess it's what they call a Balkan location or a scheme for what can be built on the site. And then that gets honed down to consider the types of uses that can occupy the that Balkan location or that scheme. They develop that up, but before they can lodge it as a building consent, they need to get a fire engineer to review the occupancy, the safe paths, the types and uses, because different uses have higher risks, like childcare and retirement villages are a different risk category. And they come up with a fire report, and that recommends specified systems like sprinklers, fire alarms, etc., to ensure the occupants are kept safe. Now that gets submitted to council with the building consent, The building gets built. When the council issue the code compliance certificate, they also have to issue the compliance schedule, which is essentially lists all those specified systems.
Yep.
And there's other things in there like lifts and backflow prevention devices and air conditioning systems, etc., as well, which keep the building safe, not just from a fire point of view, but also from other like water and fresh air and all that sort of stuff. Those are the systems that need to be maintained every year to ensure that the building's kept safe. And that's our Bible, essentially. So that's essentially where these things come from, building warrant of fitnesses. There's strange things called building warrant of fitnesses. And IQPs, or independent qualified people who are certified by local territorial authorities. They do the inspection, what they call IMR, or inspection maintenance reporting, of each of those specified systems. And at the end of the year, and it's backwards looking, at the end of the year, if all those specified systems in the buildings have been maintained and inspected, then they can issue what's called a 12A to say that that building's, the inspection maintenance reporting has been done over that 12-month period. And we essentially collect those. We send inspectors oftentimes to do the passive systems, which is the safe path to the final exit, to make sure the exits aren't blocked or barred. It's really about getting people out in the event of a fire, making sure that those safe paths are free and clear. So we issue a 12A for that. We collect all the other documents, and then we issue the warrant of fitness to the local territorial authority. We deal with every territorial authority across New Zealand. Each of them have their own little bit of an interpretation on the Building Act and how they should be, 12As should be collected and submitted. But we have to meet their requirements. So that's sort of a little bit of an overview of our sector and what we do. There's a whole lot of technical terms that come into it.
A lot of three-letter acronyms and things like that.
That's stuff that I probably still don't understand.
But that's I guess we see it from, say, with a brand new building. In that first year of operation, you've got the compliance schedule, and then you get the first BWOF comes after 12 months. So you've got that compliance schedule there.
When they issue the code compliance certificate, they also issue the CCC code compliance certificate. They issue the compliance schedule and another document which is called the compliance schedule statement. And the compliance schedule statement, because BWOFs are backwards looking, when you first finish a building, they can't go back a year and show the inspection maintenance reporting has been done. So that's essentially has to be on display, and that's your warrant of fitness for the year from that point. And then BC Group or another service provider will take over from there 1 year later. But what's often an issue, and I've spoken to a number of people about this, is that sometimes construction companies assume that because they've got a warranty on just say a sprinkler or an alarm system, they don't have to, it's brand new. They don't have to undertake the inspection, maintenance, and reporting, do the service. So 1 year later, they come to us, say, "Where's your warrant of fitness?" Well, who's been maintaining the systems? Oh, it's under warranty. No, you actually need a service contract in place right from the start to maintain the system. And sometimes there's a lot of confusion around that stuff. But as soon as it's finished and the CCC is issued, sometimes like Commercial Bay, they wanted to open sooner, and we do all precinct properties work. They do a certificate of public use, or CPU, and that confuses people because it's not a code compliance certificate, and there's no compliance schedule issued. Because they can't issue the code compliance certificate until it's all up and running, but people are still occupying the buildings. Under that requirement, with a CPU with no CCC, here we get into the acronyms now, confusing everybody. They still need to do the inspection, maintenance, reporting all the specified systems because it's occupied. So anyway, just a little tip.
That's really helpful. I've actually learned a couple of things there, which is great. So the role that your company provides is to you capture or you collect all the 12As, and then you submit them to council, and then I'm just paraphrasing, I guess, but you submit them to council, then the BWOF certificate's issued to the building owner.
We issue the building warrant of fitness, and we send it to council. Council do critique the warrant of fitness, and if it's not done properly, one of the trends that we're finding with the territorial authorities across the country is they're becoming more careful about issuing or confirming our warrant of fitnesses or anyone's warrant of fitnesses. So the level of information and accuracy is becoming more and more important. So our industry's requiring more professionalism to sort of keep track with that, because councils are now held more to account by MIMBI around the Building Act. Yeah.
Did any of that come out of what happened down in Christchurch with the earthquakes? Was that more of a health and safety thing or a building design thing? Any changes that came out of the Christchurch earthquakes?
I think it's a industry, a worldwide sort of education with the Grenfell apartments, where there was a number of fire doors and other doors that should have been closed, securing the safe path, which is the exit sort of way down to the final exit. With those doors being compromised and people losing their lives, that and other events quickly travel around the world. So people become aware a lot quicker about these things, and I just think it's a culture of keeping people safe and awareness. The earthquakes probably weren't a major factor in building compliance, but once again, it's another factor in providing education and information for territorial authorities, occupants, and other people to ensure that they are safe in buildings. So I just think this stuff's going to become more and more important, and there's that transparency and information for occupants. I mean, earthquake buildings has been a big thing. Earthquake prone buildings, I think it's under 34% of new building standard. If they're earthquake prone, now councils are listing that on your council file, and it's issued on a land information memorandum if you seek it now. And I think they're requiring almost certificates to be put up to show that you're entering a building that's actually earthquake prone. So that transparency, I think, and that accountability is becoming more and more of a factor worldwide, and compliance is not exempt from that.
You see that when, say, if you're looking through the classifieds for a property that's for sale, they have the MBS rating and it's a percentage, and I think that's really good, because it provides people with that information, like you say, to make a decision. Like they say, well, the risk is that that rating might be a bit lower, so then they have to say, well, are we prepared to accept that? Or if it's high, it makes it it makes it a very simple decision if you're going to purchase a property. But then I guess as a landlord, you have to make up a decision to say, well, do we remediate the building, to get it to improve the standard, which probably makes it more desirable at the end of the day. So that MBS numbers become quite relevant over the last 10 or so years.
Yeah, well, there's a big cost if you're buying a building, and you have to bring it up to the current. 67 or 70% seems to be more the standard these days. So going through and doing the invasive testing and understanding what's required to bring it up, and that can basically in some cases mean essentially gutting some parts of the building to put columns and beams that reinforce the building. So being aware that that's a part of a cost of buying a building is only really fair. So it's an example of the sector and accountability, and ADIS sale and purchase agreement getting more and more clever around holding vendors to account if they know there's an issue with the building and they're trying to sell it. We're getting approached by more and more people to do due diligence on compliance before they sell buildings, just so that they know that when they're buying a building, they're not picking up something where there's a whole pile of other remedial issues or issues that could cost them a lot of money before they actually make a commitment to buy. It may be a $5 million or a $20 million building, but when you get that stuff wrong, it can be a huge cost and a risk to you as a PCBU. Once again,
absolutely. You don't want to end up buying a lemon, so to speak. IQP, so independently qualified person. what is the process that you go to if someone wants to become an IQP, and what do you necessarily have to be an IQP for?
Well, there's 16 specified systems under the Building Act. Each one needs the right training and procedures. So each territorial authority, generally if you approach them, will provide you a criteria that they've created, and they're all individually created. There's no sort of benchmark, but it's really around experience. It's really around training. There's various training courses that you need to go through for some of the more significant systems like lifts. There's qualifications that are required for probably lesser or easier systems to test, like say a backflow backflow prevention device, which needs an annual test. If you're generally, I think in that case it might be that you're a plumber that have had so much years experience. But it depends on the specified system and the technical requirements to do the inspection, maintenance and reporting. But they usually have their own panels that you need to apply to, and it's quite thorough to become an independent qualified person. And up until recently, the Auckland Council required them to be renewed every year. More recently, they've changed it to a 3-year cycle. A lot of the other territorial authorities are around 1 or 2 years certification, and so there's a need to continue doing the ongoing education piece and showing your commitment to your craft and in your space as an IQP.
So the I in IQP, the independent side, can you actually be an IQP and assess your own work, or do you have to be totally separate? So if, like a plumber, for example, or a backflow device person, can they do the backflow device, like repair it and then assess it, or do you have to get someone totally different in to assess it for the 12A?
It depends on the specified system. For lifts, the person that does the inspection, maintenance and reporting can't sign off on the lift. You need a separate IQP to assess that. But most of the sort of non-life-threatening ones, you can do the work and sign it off. You take responsibility as the IQP. For when you install sprinklers or alarm systems, the construction company or the company that puts it in place, they need an independent company under a different act to sign it off to say it's been installed properly, to get a code compliance certificate. But then if there's any repairs and maintenance, the IQP that does the inspection, maintenance reporting can sign off the 12A at the end of the year. Under Section 110 of the Building Act, you're required to supply a annual report. The IQP is required to supply an annual report to the owner of the building, and that steps through all the maintenance, repairs, inspections, any defects that they've had through the year, and lets them know, of any issues that they've had and discovered trends over a period of time around that specified system. And probably for a property management company like yourselves, you can then start to identify, well, this is happening too often now, and maybe the system needs replacing. And that's a sort of a fail-safe process of keeping track of the functionality of that system, that specified system over time. But that's written into the Act.
Okay.
But yeah, to answer your question, generally the IQP who does the repairs and maintenance signs it off at the end of the year.
You see companies that have the IQP registered, but then you have like more consultant type people who might work for themselves, or when they've been in the lift industry for X amount of time, and it's seen as they've gotten out of the industry, but they've still got something to add, like their experience and things, so they become, say, an IQP to inspect lifts and things like that. So they're not losing the experience to the industry, because I think it's quite an important thing too. We don't want to have a whole lot of IQPs who don't have that practical experience.
It's like most industries at the moment. I think there's a shortage of quality IQPs around, but I think over time clients are getting smarter and getting the right people that can do the job properly. One of the bugbears in our sector typically is if somebody's been maintaining the system all year, and then a month before the warrant of fitness is due, they suddenly find a defect, and it's a critical time because we're actually trying to issue the warrant of fitness for that year. We can't issue a warrant of fitness if it's not working as it was intended when it was installed. So they raise a defect. Oh, well, you need to replace this or change that, and everyone else is ready to go except for that one issue. And then property management companies like yourself have to run around and try and get quotes and repairs. Pretty quickly, those parties that do that quite regularly are identified and weeded out and saying, well, actually, sometimes it's genuine, and that's happens. But if it happens quite often, and because they're Johnny on the spot, they get their remedial works. Pretty soon, owners who are more and more sophisticated these days realise we just don't want to deal with those people because it doesn't look like it's a valid defect.
Well, and we've come across that before, where and it comes down to the wording that they used in their quotes. They say, "We recommend." It's like, well, we kind of thought, okay, you've recommended this, and we had actually had someone do a peer review of a certain quote because it was a large number, and they said, well, and they checked the system, and they said, well, the system's fine, but you've received this recommendation, and it was more like they were fishing for business rather than actually telling you what you needed to hear or that your system was in need of repair. And when we actually went back and questioned them, they just said, oh yeah, well, it was just a recommendation. It wasn't actually an actual need to do it. And we thought, well, that's that's not entirely fair. We rely on them to give us accurate information, especially about systems that involve saving people's lives or protecting people's lives.
Because the standards have changed and been upgraded over time, the new standard is a lot more onerous, typically around inspection, maintenance and reporting, but also other component parts of that standard. And only if you go for a new building consent for the whole building are you required to bring it up typically to the current standard, and sometimes you're not, depending on the territorial authority's position. But sometimes or occasionally a contractor will say, well, you need to bring that system up to the new standard. And in some cases that requires you to replace the whole system.
Right.
But unless you're doing building works, you don't need to. And that's really a case of what you to your point, fishing for more work to try and upgrade and install new systems when they don't need to be installed. The old systems suffice. It may not do the job as well as the new system, but it still complies with the law and the Act.
Well, it seems to be taking advantage of, say, a building owner or a manager who isn't aware of the standards or the requirements, and the fact that you don't have to upgrade something, because of where that standard when it was built. They take advantage of that lack of knowledge at times, I guess.
Which is sort of a key factor as to why people employ us and our staff with all the experience they have. They've got a sounding board for some of these contractors who maintain their systems for them to check it past us and just say, is this right? Why do we need to upgrade this? And with us as an independent party working for them, we often give them the right advice, and it can save them a lot of money through sort of not requiring to upgrade certain systems at certain times.
One thing we get asked quite a lot, and I've never really had a clear answer on this, so I'm putting a bit of pressure on you, is what would happen to a building that failed its building warrant of fitness? Because you often hear stories, and I don't know how true they are, the building can be shut down or condemned or what have you. Do you have any idea about what happens if a building does fail its BWOF?
Oftentimes there is a question around insurance. And if you don't have a warrant of fitness, is the building insured? I think it's the Insurance Reform Act 1977, but it's only not insured, or could be. The insurance could be contested if it didn't have a warrant of fitness and that system that was supposed to protect the building or protect the occupants wasn't working. I.e. it's got to be causative to the issue. So insurance companies couldn't, if you didn't have a warrant of fitness and it was just because your backflow prevention device wasn't working, then insurance companies couldn't deny your insurance because your backflow prevention device didn't prevent a fire,
right?
For example, even if you didn't have a warrant of fitness. But the clauses in people's insurance contracts do talk, and they can change from company to company. So don't take that as the word or the gospel on this stuff. But if you haven't got a warrant of fitness, people still occupy the buildings, as I say, probably the only concern I'd have if I was an owner of a building would be being the PCBU, and if there was an issue and it was did affect the insurance and the safety of the occupants. But people do continue to occupy buildings that don't have a warrant of fitness, knowing the risk. The owner of the building under the Building Act is the person responsible, so we're their agent. We carry a degree of culpability, but by keeping them informed, the onus to fix or maintain or get it up to speed so it does get to the standard of obtaining a valid warrant of fitness sits with the owner. And sometimes it's not always possible to repair a system that might be a bit older and they can't get parts, so they can't get it working as it was intended at the time.
Do you ever find any pushback from clients who just think it might be a load of rubbish or a waste of time, or they just they haven't fixed things from years and years of previous inspections? I mean, we've taken over buildings where the list of things that hasn't been repaired is like a mile long, and you're thinking, how's it still got a BWOF? And we come in and do all these repairs and things. Do you ever get pushback from clients who think, well, they just push things under the mat?
Yeah, we're their agent. We can only advise them. We're not actually the party culpable under the Act. They are. So we can tell them, you need to fix this or this needs to be done. Some people don't want to listen, and they take that risk, not just with council sending a notice to fix and receiving a fine, but also, as I said, with the occupants. And as tenants become smarter and smarter, they'll start to really only work with building owners that are proactive in making sure that buildings are working as they were intended, and the systems in the buildings are working as intended. So over time, I think it's becoming more and more of a factor. But you can tell landlords that don't maintain their buildings and take shortcuts. And I think over time, they're the ones that are going to have the vacant buildings.
Absolutely. I've heard horrific stories in the past of people that have locks on doors where you shouldn't have locks, and they know that the WOF inspector's coming around to do the the annual checks or whatever, and they take those locks off and then they put them. It's just bloody. That's really poor behaviour as a building owner. Someone that's responsible for the safety of people in that building. So if we see things like that, we get on them very quickly. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, because I think you're right about how over time everything is getting more and more. People are just used to compliance. They're getting more used to health and safety, and it's improving. Like the standard of everything is improving around expectations of compliance and health and safety.
I agree. Definitely.
What do you enjoy about the industry? Because like we said at the start, it's kind of one of those behind the scenes industries which can be enjoyable. Like you said, you don't have the harsh glare on you and stuff, but what gives you good satisfaction about the industry and what your company does?
As mentioned before, the privilege of working with some great staff members, team members, and those connections, those relationships make working in the industry fun. We have a really good work environment. Everybody's respectful and seen as equals, and we have good banter and good relationship. In terms of clients, I really enjoy sort of doing what we said we're going to do for the client and delivering to them what we said we were going to do, plus customer service. But probably the gold for me personally is really just having a few connections with a few people that I get on with and I relate to, and we have an honest and more meaningful relationship. That connection and that sort of it's more than just a business relationship. It's a friendship. We talk about family and other things, and those are the connections for me that makes my job really enjoyable.
That's the people side of it, eh? And as much as we say it all the time, as much as it's about building management or compliance or health and safety or what have you, it's actually it's the people that make the industry. Same thing in here. I agree with what you said there about how you have certain, I guess, relationships with either contractors or suppliers or people on your team, and that it's realising that everyone, we're all trying to achieve the same thing at the end of the day. And if you can get on with them at a certain level, it just makes everything way more enjoyable because you spend so much time with them anyway.
No, it's the fun part. I look forward to catching up with people. I was looking forward to seeing you today.
Likewise.
We're at the same stage and independent business owners, and we've got a lot in common. And so that connection really makes it worthwhile. And we have that with, like you say, suppliers. A lot of customers I enjoy. Like we get the chance to have a coffee and catch up. That's
the flip side of that is you'd hate to be miserable about who you worked with and what your business did and who you interacted with. So it's just having that positive environment and people that you work well with makes a lot of difference, eh? Do you think there's anything in your industry that needs to be sort of improved or changed, or are there sort of certain standards that you think, gee, that could be done a bit better, or say industry, but then not so much how you guys work, because we know how you guys work, very high standard, but is there an industry group that sort of has an overall responsibility for keeping the compliance industry moving forward?
I think back in 1998, my fellow shareholder Ian Petrie and two others started the Association of Building Compliance, or ABC. That's grown to be a reasonably significant advocate for our space. And they, I guess they're the watchdog for, from a sort of a bigger picture point of view. Each IQP is accountable to the territorial authorities, but that's sort of the group, that sort of the glue that holds us all together is the Association of Building Compliance, and that provides a lot of the training and supervision in certain areas. Probably the other point to your question, a lot of the territorial authorities have different interpretations of the Building Act and how that's administered, and there is no real consistent requirement on how it's received and managed and processed, typically for building warrant of fitnesses. So some more a refinement of how the Building Act is holds the territorial authorities to account, and how they have their processes and their delivery of information. Some territorial authorities are very good. You ring them tomorrow and they'll give you almost immediately a copy of the compliance schedule and the information we need to do our job properly. Others are hopelessly unorganised. They don't provide the information, and it compromises our ability and also the safety of people within buildings. So holding them to account a little bit more would be probably quite a good. MIMBI oversees it, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, but I think they're short-staffed and probably haven't provided the focus on the compliance industry that I think probably is required.
So you guys work nationwide, so you get to see a cross-section of how all the territorial authorities or the councils or whatever, how they work. Is it different is there less focus on it in the smaller towns, or is it like the bigger cities where it's less focus, or
I think there's less complication in the smaller areas, and it seems to be proportionally a lot more resources available for the bigger territorial authorities. Like Auckland Council, they have 16,500 compliance schedules to administer. There's a lot more complexity. They have bigger buildings, a lot more complex buildings. So I think that creates a lot more difficulty for them.
And How did your business go throughout the last couple of years with COVID and things? Did COVID have much of an impact on either your business or how you delivered your service, or or your team?
There was complications around access to buildings. Oftentimes, buildings were closed down when people were working from home, or people were very nervous about strangers, not strangers, but people turning up and knocking on their door and saying, "I want to look through your building." So there was delays in us, not just us, but the contractors that we work for the clients to deliver their documents and sign it off. But our system is a decentralised system, a web portal, so all of our staff essentially just work from home and could continue with their service. Probably, if anything, it made us look a lot better than our competitors who didn't have the information. So as a result, we've grown quite a lot because clients have recognised the importance of having that information and being able to access it during times when there is possibly going to be even more disruption with COVID or other issues. So it's been COVID's actually for us perversely has been quite a good thing, and our clients have been patient. MIMBY came up with another document that enabled us to more formally get around the fact that the inspection maintenance reporting couldn't be completed for the full year. So that was another tool that was provided to us over and above other tools like what's called a report in lieu. A report in lieu is essentially a document that says, well, we couldn't do the inspection on this date because the building was closed or the contractor was sick or whatever. So we haven't been able to comply with the full requirements of doing all the inspection and maintenance for the year. And it means that we can still issue a warrant of fitness, but it's called a reduced warrant of fitness.
Right. And so then you just have to make sure that the work is done within a certain time of the date? So it's still got to be completed?
A report in lieu requires the system to still be working as it was intended at the time it was installed. So it doesn't mean the system isn't working. It just means that one of the inspections that was required, and just say it's the monthly owner's inspections, one of the monthly owners or two of the monthly owners' inspections may have been missed. And so the report in lieu says, well, we've done 10 of the 12. We missed February and March, but the building is still working as intended. We've recently checked it off and it's still fine. So we issued a report in lieu as opposed to a 12A.
Okay. Yeah, cool. And just finally, what do you think are the challenges ahead, firstly for say the compliance industry, but then secondly for yourselves at BC Group as your company moving forward?
The challenges moving forward, really, right at this point, it's getting great staff. Luckily, we haven't had many people leave. We had one person leave for a long time, and then also getting quality IQPs to be able to do the inspection maintenance reporting. It seems to me in our space, it's not a well-known trade. If you're a builder or an electrician, those trades, they have support and training to get people into those trades. But to be an IQP for a sprinkler system or a backflow or a lift is a less known area, and a lot of the people have been around a long time. Doesn't seem to be a lot of the younger people coming into our space. So one of the challenges is trying to get the younger generation interested and committed into the space of becoming IQPs and servicing and maintaining and installing some of these systems. There really isn't the industry isn't that big that probably could support a more formal or structured sort of apprenticeships and that sort of thing. So getting people interested, educated, and understanding the benefits of being in our game is a challenge for us. I don't know the answer. I know there's a lot of people who are quite concerned about it.
Okay.
I think that's the main challenge. I don't think building compliance is going anywhere in the short term. New Zealand's building compliance standards are some of the best in the world. I looked at some of the documents that came out of the investigations from the Grenfell Apartments tragedy in the UK, and comparing our systems and processes with what's in the UK and other countries around the world. I think we've got one of the best in the world in terms of safety of buildings and accountability. And I think it's something that we should be proud of in New Zealand. And I think probably it's not going to go backwards. It's going to probably, if anything, get more strict and more legislation and regulations coming in. I just think it's the way of the world.
Oh, certainly, and I think as that awareness builds and the expectation builds of, and as these buildings get bigger and more complicated, it's good to know that there's industry bodies and companies out there like yourselves that take on that duty to make sure that they are compliant and that they are safe. So like I said earlier, we really enjoy the working relationship we've got with you guys. Our team enjoy working with you. They enjoy the portal and the technology that you guys deploy. Certainly makes our lives easier. So thanks for giving us your insights today on the BWOF industry, compliance, and building warrant and fitness. It's been a good chat. I've actually learned a few things that I might just have to go and talk to the team about today. So thanks for your time today, Ian.
I really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation. We've enjoyed a great relationship with Active Building Management.